The humans stayed silent during the battle briefing. That was the first warning. Lieutenant Commander Jack Winters sat at the far end of the long metal table. He did not move. He did not speak. His eyes, dark blue and watchful, scanned the holographic battle plans floating above the table's center. Around him, 7 alien commanders argued loudly about the upcoming fight against the Voidborn fleet. Captain Jexnar, a tall green-skinned being with 4 arms, pointed at the hologram. "We will divide our forces here and here," he said, his translator making his clicks and whistles into smooth English. "The Voidborn will expect a direct attack. We will surprise them with this pincer movement." The other aliens nodded and chirped their agreement. A Mazorian with glittering scales suggested adding more ships to the right flank. A bird-like Avarian wanted faster scout ships at the front. Everyone had ideas. Everyone except Jack. Admiral Krell noticed the human silence first. The blue-skinned Araxian war leader had fought alongside humans before. He had learned to respect them, especially their strange talent for seeing what others missed. Jack's unusual stillness made the fine scales along Krell's spine stand up with worry. "Commander Winters," Krell said, his deep voice cutting through the noise. The room went quiet. "You have said nothing. What does the human think of our plan?" All eyes turned to Jack. He was the only human on the flagship Intrepid Dawn, and the sole representative of Earth in this part of the Alliance fleet. Humans were still new to space travel compared to the other races, but they had proven themselves smart and tough fighters. Jack looked up slowly. His face showed nothing, another trait that made aliens uncomfortable. Most species in the Alliance displayed their feelings clearly, with color changes, feather movements, or scent releases. Humans could hide everything behind still faces. The plan looks good on the display," Jack said quietly. "But I've seen this formation before." The room seemed to grow colder. Jack tapped his wrist device, and a new hologram appeared next to the battle plan. 8 years ago. Earth forces against the Meridian Collective. Jack pointed at the old battle recording. "We used this exact approach. It was a disaster." The recording showed ships moving in formations nearly identical to the ones just proposed. Then it showed those ships being destroyed one by one as hidden enemy forces sprung a trap. 70% of our fleet was lost, Jack continued. The Meridians knew what we planned before we did it. Captain Jexnar waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "The Voidborn are not the Meridians. This is a completely different enemy." Jack looked directly at him. "Yes, the Voidborn are worse. They study every battle ever fought. They learn from everyone's mistakes, even those made by humans before we joined the Alliance." Admiral Krell moved closer to examine the old battle recording. "How can you be sure they would know of an Earth conflict from before your people even met other species?" "Because 3 months ago they used a Roman Legion tactic against the Tellarite colony ships," Jack said. "A maneuver from ancient Earth, over 2,000 years old. They study everything." The room grew very quiet. The Avarian, Commander Colonel Pix ruffled her feathers nervously. "If what the human says is true, then we are planning to fly straight into a trap," finished Admiral Krell. Captain Jexnar was not convinced. "This is the best approach based on all our military doctrines. One old human battle doesn't change that." Jack stood up. He was shorter than most of the aliens, but something in his posture made them all pay attention. "Admiral," he said, still eerily calm. "Permission to show another recording?" Krell nodded. Jack brought up a new hologram. This one showed recent Voidborn attacks on 3 different Alliance outposts. He pointed out small details: the timing of their strikes, the way they positioned their reserve forces, the false retreats. They used to lure in defenders. "They're setting us up," Jack said. "These aren't random attacks. They're learning how we respond, testing our reflexes, and now they're ready for the big punch, the one we're about to throw exactly the way they expect." Colonel Pix leaned forward. "What would you suggest instead, human?" Jack thought for a moment. "We need to change everything. Not just the formation, but how we think. The Voidborn expect us to follow Alliance battle doctrine because it's all you've ever done. They're counting on it. And what do humans do differently?" asked the Mazorian commander, scales glittering under the lights. We adapt, Jack said simply. When something doesn't work, we try something else, then something else again. Earth had thousands of years of warfare before we ever reached space. We learned the hard way that doing the expected thing gets you killed. Admiral Krell studied Jack carefully. You have an alternative plan? Jack nodded. I do. But you won't like it. Why not? Asked Captain Jexnar, all forearms crossed defensively. Because it goes against everything in your military training, Jack replied. It will seem wrong, maybe even dishonorable. The word made several commanders shift uncomfortably. Honor was central to Alliance military tradition. But it will work? Krell asked. Yes, Jack said with absolute certainty. Because it's the last thing the Voidborn will expect from you. He pointed at the star map. They've studied how the Alliance fights, but they've never fought against human tactics on this scale. Admiral Krell stared at the battle plans for a long moment. Then he looked at Jack. Show us your plan, Commander. Winters. As Jack began to outline his strategy, the alien commander's expressions changed from doubt to shock to reluctant interest. What the human proposed was unlike anything in their military history. It was cunning, it was deceptive, it was risky, and it might be their only chance to defeat an enemy that had never lost a major battle. The human had stayed silent during the briefing because he saw what no one else could. That silence had been the first warning. Now, as Jack explained his plan, the aliens realized it might not be the last. 3 days after the battle briefing, Jack Winters found himself walking through the curved halls of the Intrepid Dawn to Admiral Krell's private quarters. The summons had come unexpectedly, just as Jack was finishing his meal in the ship's dining area. The door to the Admiral's room slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the blue-skinned Araxian paced back and forth. His tall, lean body moved with unusual stiffness, and the scales along his spine were raised, a sign of stress that Jack had learned to recognize. Commander Winters, Krell said, turning to face the human. Please enter. Jack stepped inside and the door closed behind him. The room was kept warmer than human quarters, with lower light that suited the Araxian's sensitive eyes. The Council has reviewed your historical data, Krell said without waiting. They believe the similarities between our planned attack and your Earth battle are coincidental. Jack's face hardened, but he kept his voice even. Admiral, with respect, the Voidborn study our battles. They're counting on this approach. I know, Krell admitted, surprising Jack. That is why I called you here privately. The full council may not be convinced, but I am. Jack nodded once. Thank you, Admiral. What would you suggest instead? Krell asked, his mandibles clicking with curiosity. Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper map. The use of physical paper made Krell's compound eyes widen with surprise. Most species in the Alliance hadn't used physical writing materials for centuries. I kept this off the digital systems, Jack explained as he unfolded the map on a nearby table. The Voidborn are too good at hacking our networks. The map showed the planned battlefield, but with ship positions marked in ways that made no sense according to standard military doctrine. We give them exactly what they expect, Jack said, pointing to the first phase of his plan, but with one critical difference. As Jack explained his strategy, Krell's expression changed from interest to shock. That's barbaric, the Admiral whispered. No, Jack corrected quietly. It's human. The plan required sacrificing 1/3 of their fleet as a deliberate, fake retreat. Those ships would appear to be damaged and fleeing, drawing the Voidborn forces into a carefully planned trap. It was a strategy built on calculated losses, something Earth's military had learned through thousands of years of warfare. Your plan asks Alliance captains to deliberately appear weak, Krell said, troubled. To pretend defeat. Yes, Jack agreed. Because the Voidborn expect you to fight until the end. They've never seen a strategic retreat used as an attack. Krell walked to the viewing portal of his quarters. Beyond the reinforced glass, stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere out there, the Voidborn fleet was preparing to destroy them. Humans have only been in space for a short time, Krell said. Yet you think differently than any species we've encountered. Why is that? Jack stood beside the Admiral. Earth wasn't united like your homeworlds, he explained. We spent most of our history fighting each other. Different nations, different ideas, constantly testing tactics against ourselves. A terrible way to evolve, Krell noted. Maybe, Jack admitted. But it taught us things that peaceful species never learned. How to think like an enemy. How to be unpredictable. How to win when we're outmatched. Krell turned to face Jack. I will support your plan, Commander Winters, but convincing the other captains will not be easy. I know, Jack said. That's why I need to speak with another human. Another human. Krell's scales rippled with surprise. There are no other humans in this sector. There's one, Jack corrected. Chief Science Officer Dren Williams on the research vessel, Discovery. She's studying void-borne communication patterns. We need her input. Admiral Krell considered this for a moment, then nodded. I will arrange a secure quantum call. But this must be kept quiet until we present the full plan to the Council. The next morning, Jack sat alone in a small communication room. The screen flickered, then showed the face of a woman with dark skin and short curly hair. Chief Science Officer Dren Williams looked tired, but her eyes brightened when she saw Jack, Commander Winters, she said. It's good to see another human face. Likewise, Jack replied. I need your help, Dren. What have you learned about void-borne battle patterns? Dren's expression grew serious. They're adapting, Jack. I've analyzed their last 12 engagements. They're using tactics from at least 6 different species' military histories, including Earth's. I knew it, Jack said. The Council doesn't believe me. Send me what you have, Dren said. I'll back up your analysis with my data. For the next hour, they discussed Jack's plan in detail. Dren pointed out potential problems and suggested improvements based on her research. It's risky, she finally said. But it could work. The Voidborn have never faced this kind of deception at this scale. Will you support me when I present to the Council? Jack asked. Of course, Dren replied. But Jack, be careful. The Alliance species don't understand how humans think about war. What seems logical to us can seem horrifying to them. I know, Jack said. But we don't have a choice. The standard approach will get everyone killed. After ending the call, Jack spent hours refining his plan. When he finally left the communication room, he found Fleet Commander Vexilia waiting in the hallway. The silicon-based Taraxian stood perfectly still, her crystalline skin reflecting the corridor lights. Commander Winters, she said, her voice like chimes in the wind. I hear you plan to challenge the Council's decision. Jack met her gaze steadily. Yes. Humans have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries, she said. The Alliance has fought wars for millennia, and yet the Voidborn have pushed you back on every front, Jack replied. Vexilia's crystal skin darkened slightly, a sign of anger. Your plan would require our captains to act dishonorably, to pretend defeat, to lie in battle. My plan would save lives, Jack said, including yours. We will oppose you in the Council, Vexilia warned. Jack nodded. That's your right. But ask yourself this. Would you rather die with honor or live to fight another day? He walked past her without waiting for an answer. The emergency council meeting was scheduled for the next morning, and Jack needed to be ready. The future of the Alliance might depend on whether these ancient spacefaring species could accept a new way of thinking about war, a human way, and if they couldn't, the Voidborn would destroy them all. The emergency council meeting began early the next morning. The command center of the Intrepid Dawn was filled with the fleet's highest-ranking officers. Admiral Krell sat at the head of the large round table, with Jack standing nearby at the holographic display. Fleet Commander Vexilia led the opposition. Her crystalline body caught the light as she stood to address the council. Humans have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries, she argued, her voice ringing like bells. The Alliance has fought wars for millennia. We should trust our own battle wisdom. Jack stood quietly until she finished. Then he stepped forward. "With respect, Commander Vexillia," he said calmly, "your battle wisdom has failed against the Voidborn. They have pushed you back on every front." Angry murmurs filled the room. The Avarian Colonel Pix ruffled her feathers in disagreement. "The Voidborn are a new enemy," Pix said. "We are still learning their patterns." Jack nodded to Admiral Krell, who activated the main screen. The face of Chief Science Officer Dren Williams appeared, transmitted from the research vessel, Discovery, light years away. "This is Chief Williams," Admiral Krell explained, "the only other human in this sector. She has been studying Voidborn communication and battle tactics." Dren looked tired but determined. "Commanders, I've analyzed the last 23 Voidborn engagements," she began. "Their tactics show clear evidence that they study and adapt to each species they encounter. They've incorporated battle techniques from at least 6 different Alliance worlds." She displayed detailed charts showing the evolution of Voidborn strategies. "Your conventional warfare is predictable," Dren explained. "Humans had to evolve beyond that just to survive Earth's history." Jack took over. "The Voidborn expect us to fight according to Alliance doctrine. They're counting on it. We need to do something they haven't seen before." A red-skinned Vulcan general named Rick leaned forward. "Show us this human plan, then." Jack pulled up his battle strategy on the holographic display. As he explained each phase, the alien commander's expressions changed from skepticism to shock. "You want us to fake a retreat?" Colonel Pix asked, her bird-like features showing confusion. "To pretend our ships are damaged and running away?" "Yes," Jack said. "The Voidborn have never seen this tactic from the Alliance. They'll believe they're winning and commit their reserve forces to finish us off. And then we spring the trap," Admiral Krell added, supporting Jack's plan. Vexillia's crystalline form darkened with emotion. "This is deception. There is no honor in such tactics." Jack faced her directly. "There is no honor in losing either. The Voidborn don't care about your honor. They care about victory." The debate continued for hours. Some commanders supported the plan while others sided with Vexillia. The council seemed deadlocked until Admiral Krell finally raised his hand for silence. "I have made my decision," he announced. "We will attempt the human strategy." Vexillia and her supporters protested, but Krell's authority as Fleet Admiral was final. The meeting ended with clear tension among the commanders. Over the next 3 days, Jack worked with fleet captains explaining the details of his plan. They needed to practice a convincing retreat that would fool the Voidborn sensors. Ships had to appear truly damaged and desperate, not just performing a rehearsed withdrawal. "Your crews must believe they're actually losing," Jack instructed a group of ship captains. "The fear must look genuine." Captain Ben Hayes of the cruiser Valiant frowned. "How do we make our crews believe something that isn't true?" "Tell only your most trusted officers about the full plan," Jack suggested. "Let the rest think it's a real battle. Their natural reactions will make the deception work better." Many of the alien commanders struggled with this concept. Their species valued honor and direct confrontation. Deliberate deception felt wrong to them on a basic level. One captain, a young Missourian named Sarn, seemed especially troubled. "In my culture, to show fear in battle brings shame to one's clan," he explained, scales shifting color with his discomfort. Jack put a hand on Sarn's shoulder. "Sometimes, Captain, appearing weak when you are strong is the wisest move of all. My people have a saying, all warfare is based on deception." As the fleet prepared, sensors detected the Voidborn armada advancing toward their position. They were moving exactly as Jack had predicted, following patterns from previous battles. Even the skeptical commanders began to listen more carefully to Jack's instructions when they saw the enemy behaving exactly as he had forecast. On the evening before the battle, Jack stood alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Admiral Krell approaching. "Are you ready, Commander Winters?" Krell asked. "As ready as we can be," Jack replied. Krell's compound eyes studied Jack carefully. "Many lives depend on your plan." "I know. If you are wrong?" "I'm not wrong," Jack said with quiet confidence. The Voidborn think they understand how the Alliance fights. Tomorrow they'll learn how humans fight. Krell made a gesture that Jack had come to recognize as a sign of respect among Araxians. My species has a saying. New dangers require new defenses. Perhaps humans are the new defense the Alliance needs. Jack nodded but said nothing more. As Krell left, Jack returned to staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Voidborn fleet was approaching, confident in their understanding of Alliance tactics. They had no idea what was coming. Throughout the ship, crews made final preparations. Some captains told their officers about the true plan, while others kept it secret, as Jack had suggested. Equipment was checked, weapons were readied, and battle stations were assigned. Captain Hayes of the Valiant would lead the first wave of ships in the fake retreat. His cruiser had been specially modified to release debris and fake radiation leaks that would make its damage look convincing. It feels strange, Hayes told Jack during their final briefing. Preparing to lose a battle we plan to win. That's the point, Jack replied. If it feels strange to us, imagine how the Voidborn will feel when they realize what's happening. As the night cycle ended, a message came from Admiral Krell to all ships. Battle stations in 3 hours. May fortune favor the brave. Jack returned to his quarters to rest before the fight. On his desk sat the paper map he had drawn, now marked with notes from multiple planning sessions. He studied it one last time, checking for any weaknesses in his strategy. Tomorrow would prove if humans really did understand warfare better than species that had been fighting among the stars for thousands of years. The thought should have terrified him, but Jack felt strangely calm. The human way of war was about to be tested against the most dangerous enemy the Alliance had ever faced. The battle began at 0600 ship time. From the command deck of the Intrepid Dawn, Jack Winters stood beside Admiral Krell, watching as the Alliance fleet moved into the formation he had designed. To anyone studying their approach, it would look like standard Alliance battle tactics, but hidden within the familiar pattern were the subtle, crucial differences that would determine their fate. Voidborn fleet detected at coordinates 227 to 43 to 189. Reported a sensor officer. They are moving into attack formation. The main view screen showed the enemy ships, black angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Hundreds of them spread across space in a formation that Jack recognized from his study of previous battles. First wave, initiate engagement, Admiral Krell ordered, his voice steady despite the tension. Captain Ben Hayes led the first group of Alliance ships forward. The cruiser Valiant and its escorts moved precisely according to standard doctrine, just as the Voidborn would expect. Weapon systems powered up, shields strengthened, and communication channels remained open. Jack watched silently, his face betraying nothing of the storm of calculations happening in his mind. Timing would be everything. For 3 hours, the battle progressed according to familiar patterns. Alliance ships exchanged fire with Voidborn vessels. Some minor damage was reported on both sides, but nothing decisive occurred. It looked like a typical battle of positioning, exactly what the Voidborn had seen before. Then Jack nodded to Krell. Now, the Admiral gave the order. Execute Protocol Thermopylae. Across the battlefield, the prepared signal flashed to the ship captains who knew the full plan. What followed appeared to be a catastrophic collapse of the Alliance left flank. Captain Hayes's Valiant suddenly spun sideways, venting atmosphere in a spectacular display. Emergency signals flooded the communication channels. We're hit. Multiple hull breaches, Hayes shouted, his voice carrying convincing panic. Engine core destabilizing. We can't hold position. Other ships in his group began to show similar signs of damage. Some fired maneuvering thrusters in erratic patterns, as if their control systems were failing. Others dimmed their lights and decreased shield power, signs of critical energy loss. The young Missourian Captain Sarn proved surprisingly skilled at the deception. His ship performed a convincing spiral away from the battle line, trailing debris and radiation signatures that sensors would read as severe damage. On the command deck, several alien officers stared at Jack with a mixture of horror and growing respect. The humans stood watching the tactical display, completely calm amid apparent disaster. Fleet Commander Vexillia approached Jack, her crystalline form glittering with tension. "They are breaking formation exactly as you predicted," she said quietly. Jack nodded. "The Voidborn think they've found our weak point. They're moving their reserve forces to exploit it." Indeed, the enemy ships were shifting position. A large group of Voidborn vessels accelerated toward the seemingly crippled Alliance left flank. Their formation tightened, focusing their firepower on what appeared to be easy targets. "They've taken the bait," Jack said. "How can you be so certain?" asked Vexillia, who had disagreed most strongly with the plan. "Because," Jack replied, "it's what I would do." Admiral Krell watched the tactical display with growing tension. "The Voidborn commander is committing more ships than we anticipated. If our timing is off—" "It won't be," Jack assured him. "Hayes knows what to do." Aboard the Valiant, Captain Hayes continued the elaborate performance. His ship tumbled end over end, drawing the Voidborn vessels closer. The cruiser's weapons remained powered down, its shields apparently failing. Emergency calls continued to broadcast on open channels. "Abandon. Ship all hands to escape pods," Hayes shouted for the benefit of any Voidborn listening to their communications. The ruse worked perfectly. The Voidborn ships closed in, eager to destroy the crippled Alliance vessels and create a gap in their defensive line. More enemy ships joined the attack, sensing an opportunity for a decisive victory. Jack kept his eyes on a different part of the tactical display. A countdown timer showed the final seconds before the next phase. When it reached 0, he spoke a single word to Admiral Krell, "Lazarus." Krell nodded and gave the command. "All ships execute Lazarus protocol." The effect was immediate and devastating. The dead Alliance ships suddenly powered up hidden weapon systems. Captain Hayes's Valiant, now perfectly positioned beneath the largest concentration of Voidborn vessels, unleashed its full arsenal at point-blank range. "For Earth and the Alliance," Hayes transmitted before launching every missile and energy weapon his ship carried. The Voidborn, caught completely by surprise, had no time to raise their defensive shields. The first wave of attacks tore through their formation, destroying several ships instantly. At the same moment, the scattered Alliance fleet executed the second part of Jack's plan. Ships that had been holding position at the edges of the battlefield suddenly converged in a pincer, movement that Jack had adapted from ancient Earth naval tactics. The Voidborn, overextended and suddenly surrounded, found themselves caught in overlapping fields of fire. On the command deck, even Vexillia showed signs of shock at how perfectly the trap had closed. "The Voidborn are attempting to regroup," reported a tactical officer. "Their communication channels show significant confusion." "They don't understand what's happening," Jack explained. "Their entire strategy was based on how the Alliance has always fought. This is completely outside their experience." Admiral Krell issued new orders. "All ships, press the advantage. Do not allow them to re-establish formation." The battle transformed in minutes. The Voidborn ships, normally so coordinated and methodical, began to move erratically. Some tried to retreat while others continued to attack, their unified strategy broken by confusion. Captain Sarn's ship, which had appeared so damaged earlier, now led a fierce attack against the Voidborn rearguard. The young Missourian had embraced the human tactic with unexpected enthusiasm. "The deception worked," Vexillia admitted, watching the tactical display. "I did not think it possible." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Appearing weak when you are strong. An idea as old as human warfare." For the next hour, the battle continued to unfold according to Jack's plan. The Voidborn tried several times to counterattack, but each attempt was met by Alliance ships already positioned to block them. It was as if the human could see the future. In reality, Jack had simply understood how the enemy thought. By studying their past battles and recognizing their patterns, he had predicted their responses and planned accordingly. As the Voidborn losses mounted, their largest ship, a massive dreadnought known as Eternal Night, moved forward to direct the battle personally. Exactly as Jack had calculated, "Admiral," Jack said quietly to Krell, "it's time for the final phase." Krell looked at the human with new respect. "Give the order, Commander Winters. This is your victory." Jack touched his communication panel. "Captain Hayes, the flagship is yours." The Voidborn flagship Eternal Night moved forward through space, its massive black hull dwarfing the surrounding ships. Alliance intelligence had never recorded this vessel joining a battle directly. Its appearance now showed how desperate the Voidborn had become. On the command deck of the Intrepid Dawn, Jack Winters watched the enemy flagships approach with quiet satisfaction. This final move completed his prediction. "Captain Hayes, are you in position?" Jack asked through the secure channel. "Affirmative, Commander," Hayes replied from the Valiant. His ship had continued its convincing act of being heavily damaged. Now it drifted, seemingly dead in space, directly in the path of the approaching Voidborn flagship. Jack turned to Admiral Krell. "All ships, execute Lazarus Protocol." The order went out across the Alliance fleet. Across the battlefield, the remaining crippled Alliance vessels suddenly powered up hidden systems. Captain Hayes' supposedly doomed frigate revealed its intact weapons array, now positioned directly beneath the Voidborn flagship. For Earth and the Alliance, Hayes transmitted before launching his full missile complement at point-blank range. The Voidborn flagship had no time to raise its defensive shields. Multiple explosions bloomed across its underside as Hayes' missiles found their targets. The massive ship lurched sideways, its movement suddenly uneven. At the same moment, the scattered Alliance fleet executed the final part of Jack's plan. Ships that had been holding position at the edges of the battlefield suddenly converged in a pincer movement. The Voidborn fleet, already confused by the fake retreat turned sudden attack, now found themselves completely surrounded. "They are trapped," said Fleet Commander Vexlia, her crystalline form gleaming with a new respect as she watched the tactical display. Jack nodded. The Voidborn never expected this level of deception from the Alliance. They studied your previous battles and assumed you would follow the same patterns. "But humans do not follow patterns," said Admiral Krell. "We create new ones," Jack agreed. Sating battle shifted dramatically. The Voidborn ships, caught in crossfire from all directions, began to break formation. Some attempted to retreat while others fought with increasing desperation. Their normally perfect coordination had been shattered by confusion. On the main view screen, the Voidborn flagship Eternal Night continued to take heavy damage. Captain Hayes' attack had been joined by other Alliance ships, all concentrating fire on the enemy command vessel. "Voidborn communications are in chaos," reported a comm officer. "They're sending conflicting orders to their fleet." Jack allowed himself a small smile. Without their flagship's coordination, their advantage is gone. Within 40 minutes, the battle had completely reversed. The Voidborn fleet, which had never before suffered a major defeat, began a disorganized retreat. The Eternal Night, trailing debris and venting atmosphere, led the withdrawal. Captain Sarn's ship, which had performed such a convincing fake defeat earlier, now led the pursuit of the retreating enemy. The young Mazorian had embraced human tactics with surprising enthusiasm. "Do we follow them?" Vexlia asked Admiral Krell. The Admiral looked to Jack. "Commander Winters?" Jack shook his head. "No. Let them go. They've learned a valuable lesson today, and so have we." "What lesson is that?" asked Vexlia. "That predictability leads to defeat," Jack said simply. "The Voidborn will think twice before attacking the Alliance again." As the enemy disappeared from their sensors, the command deck erupted in celebration. Species that had fought together for centuries but had never achieved such a victory against the Voidborn now cheered as one. "Admiral," Krell silenced them with a raised hand. "The battle is won, but at a cost. Begin rescue operations immediately. Several of our ships took real damage during the feint." Jack nodded in agreement. The plan had succeeded, but not without sacrifice. Some of the ships, pretending to be damaged, had indeed been hit when their shields were lowered to make the deception more convincing. In the aftermath, as damage reports came in and rescue ships recovered survivors, Admiral Krell approached Jack on the observation deck. The humans stood alone, looking out at the debris field that marked their victory. "Your strategy succeeded, Commander Winters," Krell said. "The Council has sent congratulations. This is the first major defeat the Voidborn have suffered since they appeared in our space." Jack nodded but remained focused on the rescue ships moving through the debris. "How many casualties?" "Fewer than any previous engagement with the Voidborn," Krell answered. "But still 217 confirmed, most from the ships that led the false retreat." Jack was quiet for a long moment. "A necessary cost, Admiral, and far less than we would have paid otherwise." Krell's translator struggled to find the right words for his next question. "This way of thinking, is it common among your kind?" Jack turned from the window. "There's an old saying on Earth, si vis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war." He looked directly at the alien admiral. "We don't glorify conflict. We study it so thoroughly because we hope to end it." "A strange contradiction," Krell observed. "Humans are full of contradictions," Jack said with a small smile. "That's what makes us unpredictable." Later that day, as Alliance headquarters received news of the unprecedented victory, Jack found himself summoned to a special meeting of the Council. He entered the chamber to find representatives of all 7 species waiting for him. Fleet Commander Vexillia, who had opposed his plan most strongly, rose to speak first. "Commander Winters," she said, her crystalline form glittering under the lights. "I was wrong to doubt your strategy. The Alliance has much to learn from humans." Jack nodded in acknowledgement but said nothing. Admiral Krell stepped forward. "The Council has decided to create a new position within Alliance Command. We call it Strategic Adaptation Officer. We would like you to be the first. Your task," continued Vexillia, "will be to teach our commanders to think like humans." Jack considered the offer carefully. "We have a lot to learn from each other, Commander. The Alliance has centuries of space warfare experience that Earth lacks. Then, we will exchange knowledge," Krell said. "Starting with this." He handed Jack a small communication device with a new Alliance directive displayed on the screen. "When the humans go quiet, listen carefully." Jack read it and smiled. His silence during that first battle briefing had indeed been the warning that saved the Alliance. Now that lesson would be remembered. As he left the Council chamber, Jack thought about how quickly things had changed. Just days ago, the alien commanders had dismissed his concerns. Now they wanted to learn human tactics. The Voidborn had made a critical mistake in their calculations. They had studied Alliance battles for centuries and thought they understood how their enemy fought. But they had never encountered the unique perspective that humans brought to warfare. They would not make that mistake again. Neither would the Alliance. The next time the humans stayed silent during a briefing, everyone would pay attention.